In 2013, Man of Steel brought Superman back to the big screen with a bold reimagining of his origin story. The film opens on the planet Krypton, an alien world on the brink of catastrophic collapse. Krypton's advanced society has mined its planet's core to instability, and amid the chaos, we meet Jor-El, the planet's chief scientist, and his wife Lara. Knowing Krypton's doom is imminent, Jor-El takes a desperate step to preserve his people's legacy. In defiance of Krypton's strict artificial population control, where babies are engineered for predetermined roles, Jor-El and Lara have naturally birthed a son, Kal-El, the first natural birth on Krypton in centuries. As explosions rock the landscape and the planet's governing council panics, Jor-El steals the Kryptonian Codex, a skull containing the genetic blueprint for their race. In a heartfelt and urgent sequence, Jor-El infuses this codex into baby Kal-El's cells, effectively making the child the living vessel of Krypton's future. The parents place their infant into a small spacecraft, hoping to send him somewhere safe, a planet called Earth. This decision is not taken lightly. It represents a gamble that their son will be free to choose his own destiny out among the stars, away from Krypton's doomed fate and rigid societal rules. As the launch begins, General Zod, the head of Krypton's military, bursts in with a faction of soldiers, executing a coup amid the planetary crisis. Zod, driven by his obsessive duty to protect Krypton, is enraged that Jor-El has taken the Codex, and that the baby, Krypton's potential last son, is being sent away rather than kept to rebuild Krypton. Jor-El and Zod clash physically. Although Jor-El is a scientist, he proves formidable in combat. Ultimately, Zod kills Jor-El in anger, but not before the craft with baby Kal-El launches into space. The grief-stricken Lara watches her son's ship race toward the stars, escaping the fate about to befall Krypton. Zod's rebellion fails as he and his followers are arrested by Kryptonian authorities. In a last judgment carried out hastily before the planet's end, Zod and his co-conspirators are sentenced to the Phantom Zone, a sort of extra-dimensional prison, for their crimes. They are encapsulated in stasis pods and shot into space. A grim irony, as Zod is forced to survive while his beloved planet dies. Moments later, Krypton's core finally collapses, and the planet implodes in a spectacular, tragic eruption. From this thunderous beginning, the tiny ship carrying Kal-El hurtles through the cosmos toward Earth, carrying hope symbolized in the infant survivor and the Codex hidden within him. The story then shifts to Earth, where Kal-El's ship crash lands in rural Kansas. A childless farming couple, Jonathan and Martha Kent, discover the craft and the baby inside. They decide to raise the boy as their own, naming him Clark Kent. As Clark grows up in the idyllic small town of Smallville, it becomes clear he's no ordinary child. Earth's yellow sun and lighter gravity grant him superhuman abilities. He is astonishingly strong, can move at incredible speeds, and his senses are exponentially heightened. However, these powers also bewilder and sometimes overwhelm young Clark. One flashback shows him as a small boy in elementary school, suddenly overcome by his X-ray vision and super hearing. In the middle of class, he starts seeing through people and hearing every sound at once, causing him to panic and hide in a closet. Martha Kent gently comes to the door, coaching her frightened son through this episode. She teaches him to focus and find an anchor. "Imagine it's an island," she says of finding calm amid the sensory flood, helping the boy regain control. It's a touching scene that illustrates the loving guidance the Kents provide and hints at how alien and frightening the world can feel through young Clark's eyes. Jonathan Kent, meanwhile, becomes the moral compass for Clark, but also the source of inner conflict. He knows his boy has godlike powers, and he fears what might happen if the world finds out. In one pivotal childhood scene, a teenage Clark is riding a school bus full of his classmates when the bus blows a tyre and plunges off a bridge into a river. The bus sinks, and many children are trapped, drowning. Unable to just watch people die, Clark uses his strength to push the bus to safety, saving everyone. This miraculous feat doesn't go entirely unnoticed. A few of the children, including a young girl and a bully-turned-friend named Pete Ross, suspect what happened. Later, the Kents have a serious conversation with Clark about this incident. Clark, confused and anxious, asks his father what he should have done. "Just let them die?" Jonathan, heavy with concern, hesitates and says, Maybe. It's a shocking moment for Clark and the audience because Jonathan's words are so counterintuitive to the values he's instilled in his son. Jonathan isn't being cold-hearted. Rather, he's painfully aware of how the world might react to an alien superpowered being. He's terrified that if Clark reveals himself too soon, people's fear could lead to chaos or even harm to Clark. Jonathan's stance is that his son's secret is paramount, even if it means letting others die in some situations. He tells Clark that one day he'll find out why he has these powers, implying there is a greater purpose, but until then he must keep his origin hidden. This burden weighs heavily on Clark, who inherently wants to help people, and it creates a moral dilemma that will shape the kind of man he becomes. The ultimate test of Jonathan's philosophy comes in another flashback scene on an ordinary day that turns deadly. The Kent family is driving on the highway when a huge tornado suddenly touches down, wreaking havoc. Amid the chaos of people fleeing their cars for an underpass, the Kent's truck is in danger. Clark wants to use his powers to help his parents and others, but Jonathan firmly instructs him to stay with Martha and help her get to safety, while Jonathan himself goes back to assist others. In the process of saving their family dog and warning others, Jonathan's foot is caught and he ends up injured, directly in the tornado's path. Clark, standing some distance away under the overpass, realizes his father is in mortal peril. His instinct is to rush out and rescue Jonathan in the blink of an eye with his super speed. But in a heart-rending moment, Jonathan notices Clark preparing to come help and holds up his hand, wordlessly signaling no. He forbids Clark from revealing his powers, even if it means sacrificing himself. Clark is forced to watch, anguished and obeying his father's final wish, as the tornado sweeps Jonathan away, killing him. The death of Jonathan Kent is a deeply emotional scene. It instills in Clark an enormous sense of guilt and confusion. He couldn't save his father, not because he was physically unable, but because he chose to honour Jonathan's belief that the world wasn't ready to know him. This tragedy cements Clark's cautious approach to using his powers openly, and the weight of Jonathan's sacrifice stays with him into adulthood. It's a defining trauma that makes Clark question whether revealing himself will ever truly be safe or right. When we move to Clark's adult years, we find him living a nomadic life, wandering from place to place under false names, searching for meaning and a sense of where he belongs. By now he's around 30. The film subtly mirrors him to be about 33, a number that has not gone unnoticed given its biblical resonance. Clark drifts through odd jobs. We see him working on a fishing boat, keeping to himself. Despite his attempts to stay low-key, his heroic nature continuously bubbles to the surface. In one spectacular early scene, an offshore oil rig explodes into an inferno, endangering dozens of workers. Clark, who is nearby on a fishing vessel, springs into action. He leaps onto the rig, tearing through steel doors and holding up a collapsing tower long enough for the crew to escape to a rescue helicopter. The flames engulf him, and the entire structure crumbles into the sea, pulling Clark down with it. But of course he survives, and moments later he's seen, shirtless and exhausted, emerging from the ocean under the shadow of the rescue chopper. This sequence serves to show that even without a suit or the world knowing who he is, Clark simply cannot resist using his gifts to save lives. He does it anonymously, then slips away before any authorities or journalists can ask questions. After the oil rig incident, Clark winds up in a small town in northern Canada, working at a bar. Here we get a glimpse of his restraint and quiet sense of justice. On a more personal scale, a boorish trucker harasses a waitress, behaving crudely. Clark, working as a busboy or dishwasher under an alias, calmly intervenes and asks the man to leave the woman alone. The trucker, much smaller than Clark but oblivious to his true strength, tries to provoke a fight by throwing a drink in Clark's face and shoving him. Ever mindful of his father's teachings, Clark simply takes the abuse without retaliating. The scene highlights Clark's control. He could easily flatten this bully, but he opts for the moral high ground and avoids a brawl. Later, after Clark leaves the bar, we get a bit of humour and comeuppance. The obnoxious trucker walks out to the parking lot to find his big rig bizarrely wrecked. It's been skewered through with logs, hanging like a bizarre art installation. It's implied that an annoyed Clark used a flash of super speed and strength to exact a little harmless revenge without directly harming the man. This moment, while played lightly, reinforces that Clark is not saintly perfect. He has feelings and a temper. But even when he lashes out, he does it in a way that avoids hurting anyone. It's a small release valve for the frustration of always having to hide his true self. The narrative kicks into high gear when it introduces Lois Lane and the discovery that will finally connect Clark with his extraterrestrial roots. Lois Lane is an intrepid reporter for the Daily Planet, known for her tenacity and fearless pursuit of the truth. She travels to the Arctic to investigate a mysterious find, the US military, and scientists have uncovered something large buried deep in the ice. Rumours suggest it might be a submarine or some secret project, but it's actually an ancient Kryptonian scout ship sent to Earth thousands of years ago. Clark catches wind of this discovery too. He's working incognito at the military's Arctic dig site as a manual labourer. Feeling a pull he can't explain, he ventures out to the icy excavation site at night and sneaks into the gigantic alien craft that's now exposed beneath the ice. Lois, ever curious and unwilling to stay behind the perimeters, follows the mysterious worker, Clark, out onto the glacier with her camera, determined to get the real story of what's been found. Inside the alien ship, Clark unknowingly triggers a dormant Kryptonian AI system. In doing so, he encounters something extraordinary, a holographic representation of Jor-El, his biological father. Earlier, Clark retrieved a special command key emblazoned with the L family crest, that same S-shaped symbol that was on his baby blankets, the very symbol that will later adorn his chest. This key, which was sent with him in his escape capsule, is essentially a flash drive containing Jor-El's consciousness. When Clark plugs it into the scout ship's control panel, Jor-El's hologram appears, finally giving Clark the answers he's yearned for all his life. Jor-El explains to Clark who he really is, his Kryptonian name, Kal-El, the story of Krypton's destruction, and the purpose for which Jor-El and Lara sent him to Earth. He learns that the S symbol of his heritage is not a letter at all to Kryptonians, but an emblem meaning hope. Jor-El speaks of how Clark can be the bridge between two peoples, an ideal that can inspire humans to greatness. It's a profound moment for Clark. After years of feeling adrift and wondering about his place in the world, he finally understands his origins and the potential role he could play. At the same time, Lois's curiosity on the ship triggers a security system. A small Kryptonian service robot sentinel attacks her, leaving Lois badly injured with a deep wound. Clark rushes to her aid, using his heat vision for the first time in an intentional, controlled way to cauterize Lois's wound and stop the bleeding. It's an intimate act that saves Lois's life and reveals to her that something superhuman is at work here. After ensuring she's safe, Clark departs with a newfound sense of purpose. Before leaving the ship, he is presented with a suit crafted by his father's AI. This iconic blue suit with a red cape bears the House of El symbol for hope on the chest. It isn't a costume sewn by Martha Kent, as in older versions of Superman. Rather, it's a Kryptonian bodysuit, something traditionally worn by members of his family. Putting it on symbolizes Clark fully embracing his heritage. In an awe-inspiring sequence, Clark steps outside the ship, into the Arctic air in this uniform, looking every bit the hero he was born to be. He then attempts his first flight. Initially, he can only leap in giant bounds, crashing back to Earth as he tests the limits of gravity. But he recalls Jor-El's encouraging words and concentrates. Soon he succeeds in breaking the Earth's surly bonds, soaring into the sky at supersonic speeds. The film revels in this moment. As Clark flies for the first time, grinning ear to ear, we experience the exhilarating freedom and power alongside him. He rockets into the stratosphere, through clouds, even playfully disturbing a flock of birds, before hurtling back down and skimming above the African savanna. This joyous flight montage is a turning point. Clark is no longer simply a wanderer hiding his powers. He's testing them openly, finally feeling what it's like to embrace who he truly is. Lois, meanwhile, survives the Arctic incident and is astonished by what happened. Back home, she writes an article about the guardian angel who saved her, but her editor, Perry White, refuses to publish such an outlandish story with numbered proof. Undeterred, Lois embarks on her own investigation to track down this mysterious saviour. In a smartly edited sequence, we see Lois doing real detective work, following a trail of anecdotes and rumours about a strong Good Samaritan who pops up in different places. She interviews people Clark helped during his travels. For example, she finds the soldier who was saved on the oil rig and hears his account of a man who pulled men out of the flames. Piece by piece, Lois traces these incidents back to Kansas, eventually arriving in Smallville and identifying Clark Kent as the likely mystery man. She even meets Martha Kent, and through gentle questioning learns about Clark's character and past. Lois finally finds Clark himself visiting his father's grave. Confronted with a journalist who knows his secret, Clark is understandably guarded, but Lois shows empathy. She has heard enough about Jonathan's death and Clark's desire for anonymity to respect his wishes. In a quiet conversation by the Kent farm, Clark shares a bit of his struggle, and Lois, moved by his story, decides not to expose him. She kills the story, telling Perry White she couldn't, in good conscience, reveal this individual after hearing what he's been through. This moment not only establishes the trust and mutual respect between Lois and Clark, but also spares us the usual long-kept secret trope. Lois actually learns Clark's identity very early on and chooses to protect it. Their relationship thus begins from a place of honesty and understanding, which is a fresh take compared to many earlier Superman tales. Clark barely has time to contemplate his next steps, however, because an even greater challenge soon arrives, literally from the sky. General Zod, who survived Krypton's end with his followers in the Phantom Zone, has spent years roaming the galaxy. After Krypton's destruction freed their prison vessel, Zod's crew scavenged old Kryptonian outposts on other planets, searching for the Codex and any survivors. They eventually detect an activation of a Kryptonian beacon, the scout ship Clark activated in the Arctic, and follow it to Earth. Zod comes not in peace, but with a clear objective: to retrieve Kal-El, who he now knows is alive on Earth, and use the Codex within him to rebuild Krypton. The film's tone shifts into a tense first contact scenario as Zod makes his presence known. All across Earth, electronics go haywire. A global broadcast signal is hijacked. On every TV screen, the image of General Zod appears, face obscured by static at first, then clearly a stern, intimidating Michael Shannon. In multiple languages, Zod issues an ultimatum to Earth's people. "You are not alone," he declares, revealing that Kal-El is one of his people hidden among them. He demands that Earth surrender Kal-El to Zod's custody or suffer grave consequences. This dramatic ultimatum sends the world into panic and sets the stage for Clark's public emergence. Here is the scenario Jonathan feared: an alien threat connected to Clark forcing him into the spotlight. Clark now faces a profound choice: remain hidden to preserve his safety, or step forward and trust humanity with the truth in order to protect his adopted planet. It doesn't take Clark long to decide. Encouraged by Martha and the memory of his father's hopes for him, he realizes he cannot let people suffer in his name. In a show of faith, Clark voluntarily gives himself up to humanity first. He meets with the US military, who are scrambling to respond to Zod. Wearing his Superman suit, he calmly surrenders to the military at a desert outpost, demonstrating that he will cooperate. Even though he could break out of handcuffs and escape at any moment, he allows himself to be shackled and escorted, a gesture to show he respects Earth's authorities and wants to build trust. There's a memorable scene where Superman is in an interrogation room under two-way glass, with Lois present as an intermediary. The military, represented by General Swanwick and Colonel Hardy, are understandably wary of this powerful being. Lois asks him about the symbol on his chest, and Clark explains gently that on his world it means hope. When they express concern about his capabilities, Clark matter-of-factly states that he's here to help, not to harm, adding a pointed reminder that if he wanted to, he could escape or topple governments easily. But that's not who he is. The message is clear: he's on humanity's side. This interaction helps convince the military leaders, and Lois even more, that Kal-El truly is a friend, not a threat. It's also in this conversation Lois playfully coins the name Superman, at least implicitly. In the film, the name is only said once by a soldier earlier, but Lois's dialogue in a deleted bit hints at it. With the formalities sorted, Clark agrees to give himself over to General Zod to spare Earth. Superman is taken by Zod's subordinates up to their spacecraft, along with Lois. Zod specifically demanded Lois be brought as well, perhaps out of suspicion about her knowledge of Kal-El. Once aboard Zod's ship, things take a sinister turn. In an atmosphere mimicking Krypton's, Superman's powers wane. He gasps for air and feels weak as his body adjusts to the Kryptonian environment, a reverse of how Kryptonians normally have superpowers under Earth conditions. Zod, finally face to face with the last child of Krypton, initially appears curious and even diplomatic. He speaks of the fall of their world, and at first it seems he might simply be trying to convince Kal-El to join his cause. But the underlying menace is clear. Zod has no intention of coexisting with humanity. Via a disturbing dreamlike sequence, he telepathically projects a scenario into Clark's mind. Clark finds himself standing in a surreal landscape of blackened earth, and as he looks around, he sinks into a mountain of human skulls. Zod appears and explains this is Earth's future if he has his way. He will terraform Earth into a new Krypton, and in the process, humanity will be eradicated, hence the skulls of the dead everywhere. It's a nightmarish vision that horrifies Clark. Zod essentially says that Krypton's past can be restored, but only by sacrificing Earth's present. He reveals that he's located the Codex, but discovered it isn't a physical object anymore. It's within Clark. Zod's science officer Jax has analysed Clark's blood and confirmed that Kal-El himself carries the genetic code of the entire Kryptonian race. Zod makes it clear he intends to extract that codex from Clark, even if it means killing him, and then use it, along with a terraforming engine, to repopulate Krypton's species on Earth. For Zod, this is the ultimate fulfillment of his purpose. He was literally bred to ensure Krypton's survival by any means necessary. To him, Kal-El is a means to an end, and Earth's people are insignificant casualties in the grand scheme. Unwilling to cooperate in humanity's extinction, Clark is helpless for the moment, as Zod's crew restrains him. Meanwhile, Lois, who was thrown into a holding cell on the same ship, gets unexpected help. Earlier, before Clark surrendered, he slipped the Kryptonian command key with Jor-El's consciousness to Lois. Now, aboard the ship, that key activates and the AI of Jor-El appears to Lois. Guiding her step by step, Jor-El helps Lois trigger an escape. Under Jor-El's direction, Lois manages to eject an escape pod and is launched back toward Earth. The ship's crew quickly notices and a hull breach occurs. Clark, regaining some strength from exposure to sunlight through the breach, breaks free of his captors. Jor-El's hologram also briefly confronts Zod on the bridge, defiantly asserting that Zod's plan will fail. A final echo of Jor-El standing up to Zod, as he did on Krypton. Enraged, Zod destroys the AI interface, effectively killing the Jor-El hologram, but by then Jor-El's plan is in motion. Clark rescues Lois's plummeting escape capsule in the nick of time, catching the pod as it hurtles through Earth's atmosphere. In a graceful touchdown, he tears open the pod, and an unnerved but relieved Lois falls into his arms. This is the second time he saved her life, and their bond only grows stronger. They land in a field, and Superman gently sets her down, a classic image of Superman as saviour, but rendered in a modern, intense scenario. Having escaped Zod's ship, Superman now realises he must stop Zod from carrying out his genocidal plan. No sooner does he catch his breath than Zod's forces launch an attack on Smallville. Zod himself yearns to learn more about the Codex, and lacking the AI Jor-El's guidance, he heads to the Kent farm, suspecting Clark might have hidden something there. In the Kent home, Zod confronts Martha Kent, terrifying her as he throws a vehicle in frustration when he doesn't find what he wants. This brings Superman hurtling back to Kansas to protect his mother. In one of the film's most action-packed sequences, Superman and Zod's two chief henchpeople, the fierce female warrior Faora Ul and the hulking Namek, engage in battle in downtown Smallville. It's the first time Superman fights enemies with powers equal to his own, and the clash is earth-shaking. The Kryptonian soldiers, wearing their armour and helmets, have some protection against sensory overload and are trained in combat, which gives them an initial edge. Faora, in particular, moves with blinding speed and almost balletic ferocity, at one point telling a cornered Colonel Hardy that a good death is its own reward. She epitomizes the merciless Kryptonian ethos. The US military, having tracked the aliens, intervenes with jets and soldiers on the streets, leading to a chaotic three-way battle. Superman versus the Kryptonians versus the overwhelmed but valiant US forces. At first, the soldiers cannot tell if Superman is friend or foe, so they engage all targets. Superman ends up fighting not just the Kryptonians, but dodging attacks from fighter jets and tank shells as well. Amid the mayhem, there's a telling moment where Superman, while battling Faora, saves a falling soldier who who had been knocked out of a helicopter. This act starts to clue the military in that he's actually on their side. The fight wrecks several blocks of Smallville. IHOP Diner gets demolished, 7-Eleven blown up, and trains thrown, giving a grounded sense of how much raw power is being unleashed. As the melee continues, Superman manages to take out Namek and contend with Farah. The turning point comes when Colonel Hardy, witnessing Farah about to kill some of his men, courageously crashes his damaged aircraft into the Kryptonian, briefly incapacitating her. Simultaneously, Superman disables Farah's breathing mask, causing her to experience the overwhelming rush of sensory input, the same kind of X-ray vision and super hearing flood that Clark learned to master as a kid. Disoriented, Farah is taken out of the fight. Zod, who had been at the farm, dons his own armor and joins the fray in a small dropship, but Superman thwarts him by causing the ship to crash. Zod steps out and for the first time is exposed to Earth's atmosphere as well, sunlight and air that give him powers but also initially cause him the painful sensory overload. Zod is stunned by experiencing super senses, but quickly, through sheer will and his warrior training, he learns to focus. A quick learner, he brings his heightened senses under control much faster than Clark did as a child. Before the fight can continue, Zod and his surviving crew retreat, regrouping for the final phase of their plan. The Battle of Smallville thus ends in a stalemate of sorts, but it's a crucial moment for Superman's standing with humanity. After the smoke clears, soldiers on the ground, like a young captain on scene, explicitly acknowledge that Superman is not the enemy. This sets a foundation of trust. The military now knows this new figure in blue is fighting to protect Earth, not threaten it. Unfortunately, the respite is brief. Having failed to capture Kal-El or retrieve the Codex directly, Zod decides to enact his endgame. He deploys the World Engine, a massive terraforming device, to transform Earth into a new Krypton. The World Engine is split into two parts. One component drops into the Indian Ocean on the opposite side of the planet, while the other, attached to Zod's Black Zero mothership, remains over Metropolis. Together, they create a destructive gravity beam, essentially pounding the planet with shockwaves and altering the atmosphere. The effects are devastating and immediate. In Metropolis, buildings tremble and topple as a beam drives into the ground, sending out pulses that fling cars and debris into the air. People run screaming through the streets amid an earthquake-like onslaught. The film doesn't shy away from showing civilians, including Daily Planet staff like Perry White, Jenny, and Steve Lombard, scrambling for their lives as skyscrapers collapse around them. The imagery here strongly evokes a mass devastation scenario, tapping into very real parallels of large-scale disasters. The stakes have never been higher. Humanity faces extinction if Superman can't stop the terraforming. The atmosphere around the World Engine also begins to change to mimic Krypton's, thickening and emitting Kryptonian atmospheric elements that start weakening Superman when he gets close. With no time to lose, Superman and the military coordinate a two-pronged counter-offensive. Superman will fly to the Indian Ocean to take out the far end of the World Engine, while the US military, with advice from Lois and the knowledge gleaned from Jor-El's AI, will attack the main gravity beam generator in Metropolis. The plan in Metropolis is clever. They aim to use Kal-El's recovered infant starship as a makeshift bomb. Specifically, the ship's Phantom Drive, the technology that originally sent Zod's crew to the Phantom Zone, can be activated to create a singularity, essentially a black hole that could suck the Kryptonian machinery and crew back into the Phantom Zone. Colonel Hardy, Dr. Emil Hamilton, one of the scientists, and Lois all board a giant C-17 plane loaded with Kal-El's dormant capsule, ready to deliver this payload at the right spot. While they race towards downtown Metropolis, Superman battles the World Engine half a world away. This is no easy task, even for him. The closer he gets to the engine, the more he struggles as the terraforming has made the environment hostile to his Kryptonian cells. For the first time, we see Superman physically weakened. Gravity is increased, the air is full of Kryptonian particulate that saps his strength. The World Engine even has tentacle-like defense mechanisms that lash out at him. It's a hard-fought struggle as he's slammed into the ground and nearly drowned by the machine's counterattacks. Drawing on every reserve of will, and perhaps a boost from Earth's empowering sun peeking through, Superman pushes through the barrier. In a triumphant effort, he musters his heat vision to bore into the machine's core and then rips the world engine apart, blowing it up into a fireball. The moment the engine is destroyed, the gravity beam stops, and the terraforming process halts. Superman lies in the crater, inhaling the now breathable air, having saved the planet from immediate destruction. The people of Metropolis don't have much time to celebrate, though. The city is in ruins and Zod is still in play above. Back in Metropolis, the battle reaches its climax. Colonel Hardy's plane struggles through debris as it approaches the hovering Black Zero ship. Zod, aboard his vessel, realizes what the humans intend and deploys Farah and the remaining crew to stop them. As the plane nears the target, Farah and another large Kryptonian leap into action, taking down escort jets and even boarding the plane. Hardy, resolute to complete the mission, stays the course even as the Kryptonians wreak havoc. Inside the plane, a desperate fight ensues. Farah advances toward Lois and the crew, but Hardy refuses to back down. In a defining heroic moment, Colonel Hardy looks Farah in the eye and echoes her own words back to her. A good death is its own reward. With that, he sacrifices himself by accelerating the plane directly into the Kryptonian ship's gravity beam generator, manually triggering the phantom drive. Dr. Hamilton activates the device, and in a flash, a singularity forms, essentially a mini black hole right over Metropolis. Zod's ship and the remaining Kryptonians, including Farah, are caught in its pull and get sucked back into oblivion piece by piece. The portal drags the massive Black Zero up and implodes it. Lois, who was on the plane helping with the device, is thrown out of the back as the craft breaks apart. She plummets through the sky amidst the wreckage. At that very moment, having finished off the world engine, Superman returns to Metropolis at top speed. In a visually satisfying rescue, he swoops in and catches Lois in mid-air for the third time in this story. They tumble to the ground together safely as the Phantom Zone portal collapses above, taking Zod's army and their ship with it. Metropolis is spared from further annihilation, but the city lies in wreckage. The dust clears to reveal a surreal, silent aftermath. Ash floating in the air, ruins of skyscrapers, and stunned survivors emerging from the rubble. One enemy remains, General Zod himself, who avoided being pulled into the Phantom Zone due to being in a small scout craft when the singularity hit. Now Zod truly has nothing left. His plan to revive Krypton is foiled. The Codex is gone, or rather, unusable now that Clark's not cooperating, and the Genesis chamber on the ship was destroyed. His followers are banished or dead, and Krypton's last remnants have slipped from his grasp. All that's left in Zod is fury and a bred-in-the-bone need for vengeance. In his eyes, Superman has betrayed his own people in favour of these humans, and Zod vows to destroy everything Superman cares about as payback. What follows is an epic final duel between Zod and Superman amid the devastated Metropolis. Zod sheds his armour, which he no longer needs now that he has fully adjusted to Earth's atmosphere and unlocked his own superpowers. For the first time, we see Zod as Superman's equal in strength, speed and ability to fly. Fueled by anger and grief for his lost purpose, Zod engages Superman in a brutal fight through the city's ruins. They zoom at each other at supersonic speed, trading blows that level whatever walls still stand. At one point, they even crash into orbit and tussle near a satellite, which observant viewers notice is emblazoned with a Wayne Enterprises logo, a fun nod to another famous billionaire hero in this universe. The satellite is destroyed as they plummet back to Earth, landing back in Metropolis for the final standoff. The battle is intense and visceral. Neither holds back. Zod, trained as a warrior, even tells Superman that his years of honing his skills make him a better fighter, whereas Clark has to rely on raw power and determination. The fight eventually crashes into the interior of what appears to be a half-destroyed transportation hub, or museum, often described as a train station. Here the final decisive moment occurs. Superman manages to pin Zod in a chokehold as they smash to a halt inside the Grand Hall. But Zod refuses to stand down. In fact, he sees an opportunity for a cruel last act. Nearby, a terrified family, a mother, father and 2 children, are cornered against a wall, trapped by debris. They are directly in Zod's line of sight. With Superman restraining him from behind, Zod deliberately ignites his heat vision, slowly inching the deadly twin beams closer and closer toward the family huddled on the floor. The parents shield their children, mere seconds from being incinerated. Superman begs Zod to stop, but Zod, gritting his teeth, responds that he will never stop, that Superman will have to kill him to keep him from killing every last human he can. In this charged moment, Superman faces the awful reality of Zod's words. With no other way to protect the innocent family, Superman makes a gut-wrenching decision. He abruptly twists Zod's neck, snapping it, and instantly killing the general. Zod's heat vision flickers off as his body goes limp. Superman has saved the family and ended the Kryptonian threat, but at a tremendous cost to himself. He's left holding the body of the last member of his own race, a man who was bred to be his enemy, but was also, in a sense, a lost soul from his homeworld. The camera lingers on Superman's face, a mix of agony, shock and sorrow. With a guttural cry, he lets out a heartbroken scream, the sound echoing through the destroyed hall. This is no victorious moment played for cheers. It is portrayed as a tragedy. Superman has been forced into the one act he desperately wanted to avoid, taking a life. In that anguished scream, it's clear that, despite Zod's evil, Superman mourns having to execute the only other surviving Kryptonian. Lois arrives and silently embraces Superman as he kneels, emotionally shattered. She offers comfort while he tries to compose himself. This ending battle is perhaps the film's most controversial and talked about scene. It fundamentally challenges Superman's traditional, no-killing moral stance. But within the story's context, it serves to illustrate the impossible choice he was faced with, and the lengths to which he would go to protect his adopted world. It also marks Superman's true emergence. He has done absolutely everything to save Earth, even at the expense of his own ideals and heritage. In the aftermath of the battle, Metropolis begins to recover. Sometime later, we see an unmanned military drone flying over a remote area, tracking a target, clearly trying to follow Superman. In a cheeky moment, Superman intercepts it mid-air and brings the drone crashing down in front of startled soldiers. General Swanwick, the US, military commander who dealt with Superman earlier, arrives and Superman steps out of the shadows to talk with him. Superman firmly but politely tells the general that he will not let the US or any government spy on him or try to find his home. He asserts that he grew up in Kansas, with a friendly hint of pride, which amusingly leaves the military folks either perplexed or somewhat charmed. So that's what America's other enemy, Kansas, one soldier jokes. The general, half exasperated and half respectful, says, "You know we can't be sure you won't act against America's interests someday." Superman gives a small smile and replies that he's here to help. But, "I grew up in Kansas, General. I'm about as American as it gets." It's his way of saying, "Trust me." When Swanwick presses how they can trust him, Superman replies that he'll work with them, but on his terms, they'll just have to take that leap of faith. This exchange shows that Superman is establishing a delicate balance. He isn't subservient to any government, but he's also not an enemy. He's essentially declaring himself a free agent who will watch over the Earth in his own way. The scene also injects a bit of levity after the heavy climax, highlighting Superman's confidence and even a slight mischievous streak, downing the drone to make a point. In a final coda, Clark finds a way to maintain a life where he can be alert to dangers, yet not constantly scrutinised. He joins the Daily Planet as a reporter. The film closes with Clark Kent arriving at the bustling Daily Planet newsroom in Metropolis, wearing his new disguise, the classic thick-framed glasses, and a mild-mannered demeanour. He's introduced by Perry White to the staff, and in particular to Lois Lane as their newest stringer. Lois, having already fallen for the man behind the glasses, and knowing full well who he is, plays along professionally. There's a warm, knowing smile between them as she says, "Welcome to the planet," with a gentle double meaning in her words. Clark has finally found his place in both worlds, as Superman, the public hero who people now know exists, and as Clark Kent, an ordinary guy who can live among humans and love them up close. The dual identity will allow him to hear about crises, a reporter is conveniently always near big news, and also keep his ear to the ground. The very last shot shows Clark embracing his humanity. He rides a bicycle to work, dresses in a humble shirt and tie, looking for all the world like just another Metropolis citizen. But we, and Lois, know that behind those glasses is the Man of Steel, ready to leap into action when needed. It's a hopeful note to end on, suggesting that despite all the destruction and challenges, Superman remains committed to being Earth's protector, and that he'll try to live an everyday life in the city he saved. Throughout Man of Steel, The narrative is rich with themes of choice, identity, and the burdens of power. The film firmly grounds Superman in a more realistic and somber world than past incarnations. It asks, what would it truly be like if an alien with incredible powers lived among us? We see that through Clark's eyes, the loneliness of being different, the moral conflicts of when to reveal yourself, and the fear of rejection or misuse of power. The two father figures in Clark's life each impart different lessons that shape him. Jonathan Kent teaches Clark the value of patience, caution, and morality rooted in human decency, even if Jonathan's protectiveness leads to controversial advice. Jor-El, on the other hand, bestows upon him a grand vision of hope and responsibility, encouraging him to guide and inspire humanity. In the end, Clark synthesizes these lessons. He steps up to defend Earth as Jor-El wanted, but he also upholds the values of his Kansas upbringing, showing restraint and humility as Jonathan taught. The film's events force Clark to make harrowing choices, notably choosing Earth's survival over Krypton's revival, and choosing to kill Zod to save a family, which in turn define the kind of hero he becomes. By stopping Zod's plan, Clark truly becomes the Man of Steel. Not just in physical power, but in inner resolve. The symbol on his chest means hope, and by the finale, he has given humanity hope through his actions. However, he's also learned hard lessons about the consequences that even a saviour must face. While Man of Steel focuses tightly on Clark's personal journey and the monumental battle with Zod, it also gently seeds a larger universe through a few Easter eggs and references. During the Metropolis fight, for instance, as mentioned, the Wayne Enterprises logo on a falling satellite is a sly nod that Bruce Wayne, Batman, exists in this world, a hint of future crossovers to come. Similarly, the logo of LexCorp, the corporation owned by classic Superman adversary Lex Luthor, appears on tanker trucks and buildings amidst the destruction, implying that Lex Luthor is out there too, perhaps watching these events. These details don't affect the plot of Man of Steel directly, but they excited fans by suggesting that Superman's arrival is catching the attention of other key figures in the DC universe. Another subtle detail occurs in the scene inside the Kryptonian scout ship. Clark notices a row of open cryopods containing long-dead explorers, except one pod is mysteriously empty. The film never explains it, but this little mystery led to much fan speculation. One popular theory was that the open pod could be a survivor who left the ship long ago, possibly even a nod to Supergirl. There are also nods to the wider Superman mythos. For example, one of Clark's childhood friends, the red-headed girl on the bus, is implied to be Lana Lang, his first crush from the comics, and a character named Jenny at the Daily Planet seems to stand in for the traditional Jimmy Olsen. These Easter eggs and references are carefully inserted so as not to distract from the main story, but they reward sharp-eyed viewers and set the stage for future installments. Indeed, the immense destruction in Metropolis shown here becomes a key plot point in the next film. We later learn a certain Gotham billionaire took issue with the collateral damage. But within Man of Steel, the focus stays on how Clark's actions on that day establish him as a public figure who will go on to shape the course of this world. In the end, Man of Steel presents a Superman who is both familiar and radically reinterpreted for a modern era. It's a story about first contact and trust, about a hero finding his place between two worlds. The film is packed with spectacular action and visuals, collapsing buildings, alien machinery, and superpowered brawls on a scale rarely seen. Yet it never loses sight of the personal drama of Clark's life. By anchoring the fantastic elements in real human emotion and dilemmas, the movie gives Superman's heroics a weight and pathos that sparks strong reactions in viewers. Some moments, like Superman snapping Zod's neck, were intensely debated by fans, but they undeniably added complexity to the character's mythos in this interpretation. This Superman is not a flawless Boy Scout in a pristine world. He's a fledgling hero in a fraught, uncertain environment, making tough calls in situations with no easy answers. And through those trials, he truly earns the trust and title bestowed on him. As he dons the glasses and smiles at Lois in the final scene, we sense that despite all he's endured, Clark Kent still has the goodness and optimism that defines Superman. He carries the hope of Krypton and the values of Earth together within him. Man of Steel therefore ends on a cautiously optimistic note. The world now knows its first superhero, one forged in fire and conflict, who stands ready to protect it. It's a modern myth about hope, sacrifice, and identity, all contextualized by scenes of a man who can fly, but who had to learn what it means to be human before he could become the hero we recognize as Superman.